Remember to take thorough notes. You will not receive a handout. You may pause and rewind if you need to. Please listen to the audio as much as you can while you watch the slides. If you prefer to listen to the audio first all the way through and then go back and jot down some notes, that's fine. You can do that. You do not need to copy down every example that I give. You can always open this video at a later time if you need to look at an example, but you should make sure you are writing down enough information so you can use your own notes as you write your essay. I will not give full credit for notes that are vague or incomplete. Today you'll be focusing on body paragraphs. The purpose of body paragraphs is to support, elaborate, or explain the purpose of the writing assignment. 3 things. Body paragraphs should have an opening or topic sentence. It's important to transition into your ideas rather than just jumping right in with an example. I gave an example down below that comes from the introduction skill that you saw yesterday and Friday. How readers envision characters is largely based on the author's descriptions. Therefore, how they are portrayed in a film adaptation can alter the perception of these characters and their role in the story. The second thing body paragraphs should do is to support and explain in detail, to elaborate, to expand, to provide more information on your thinking. So always support your subtopics and ideas with examples and details from the text. This is a good time to provide a quote. On the next few slides, which this is cut off on the bottom of the screen, but the next few slides I give the proper citation format. So you need to, when you're quoting, you always need to introduce the quote. You should never start a sentence with a quote. I gave 4 examples down below. You can introduce the quote in several ways. You could say the author's name, Hinton said, comma, quote. You could say the author wrote, the author mentioned, the author stated. Mark showed this when he said, maybe Mark is a character. Or for example, this is evident when Linda stated, comma. So there are different ways you can introduce the quote, but you should never begin a sentence with a quote. There are some grammar rules to consider when you're quoting. Always use a comma after the introduction and before the quote. Said, comma, quote. Wrote, comma, quote. Stated, comma, quote. Mentioned, comma, quote. So whatever words you're using to introduce that quotation, you need to make sure you're using a comma before the quotation mark. You should also use a capital letter when starting a quote. Again, the 2 examples down below. You need to cite quotations. Okay, there are different ways you can cite. The citation always goes at the end of a sentence. So if you're writing an example, Hinton wrote, comma, quote, and then you end the quote, and that's the end of that sentence, then you can just put the page number in parentheses. However, if you continue the sentence after you end the quote, so if the sentence continues after the quote ends, the citation should still go at the end of the sentence, not the end of the quote. So for example, Johnny said to Derry, comma, quote, no, get out of here, end quote, but Derry did not move. So the sentence is continuing after the quote ends. Then you need to put the citation at the end of the sentence, not after the quote. So 2 ways to properly cite your quotations. If you used the author's name while introducing your quote, then you only need to cite the page number. Okay, so if you used the author's name while introducing the quote, then you only need to cite the page number in parentheses. So Hinton is the author, so if you're in your little introductory phrase, you say Hinton stated, comma, and then give your quote. At the end of the quote, you only need to give the page number because you use the author's last name in that little introductory phrase. No commas, no PG, no number sign, just the number. In parentheses, period goes at the end. If you did not use the author's name while introducing the quote, then you need to cite the author's last name and page number in parentheses. So I give a few examples. In the beginning of the book, Ponyboy mentioned, comma, quote. You did not use the author's name, Hinton, in that little introductory phrase, so in parentheses after the quote, you need to put Hinton, 65, end parentheses, no comma, no PG, no number sign, just the last name, just the page number. Soda Pop stated, comma, quote, in parentheses, Hinton 24. This is shown in the book when the character says, comma, quote, and then the end of the quote, Hinton 86. So again, if you do not use the author's name while introducing the quote, then in parentheses you need to have the last name and the page number. So just a quick little recap for quoting and citing. You need to introduce your quote. You need to make sure you're using a comma before you begin the quote and then a capital letter. You need to cite the quote properly. So again, it should be the last name and number. No need to write PG or number sign. And if you use the author's last name in that little introductory phrase, then you only need the page number. The citation always goes at the end of the sentence, and there's a period after the parentheses. The third thing to keep in mind with body paragraphs is that you should try to have a closing or transitional sentence, either from one paragraph to the next or one idea to the next. Okay, sometimes it sounds funny when you end a paragraph abruptly. You want to make sure you're closing out your thought or idea. So again, don't just end your thoughts abruptly, finish your thought with a closing or transitional sentence. An example, character appearances are not the only difference between the book and the film. There are also several deleted scenes that are important to the story. And then, of course, your next paragraph would open up with how there are differences with deleted scenes. So you can sometimes transition by mentioning what you'll talk about as your next idea in the next paragraph, or you can use a transitional word. There is a separate handout on transitions to see for more examples. This is located on my website under writing skills. So this is a good document to have when you're writing an essay to look up different transitional words.